Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the source material you share with us, your articles, research, foundational texts, and we really break them down to find the most essential insights.
And today we're diving into something truly significant. We're working from the fantastic material provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team to do an in-depth teaching discussion of one of the Bible's most powerful pieces of poetry and theology.
We're talking about Psalm 18.
Exactly. And this isn't just another psalm. It is, well, it's a monument.
It's huge, 50 verses long, and the scope, the drama of it, it's absolutely staggering. So this deep dive is going to be thorough. It's going to be extensive.
That's right. And to really appreciate it, we have to start where David starts, with the heading. It anchors the entire piece. It says, "A psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul."
That context is just, it's everything, isn't it? This isn't David writing in some peaceful study.
Not at all.
He's just come through years of being hunted, hiding in caves, running for his life from King Saul. This isn't theory for him. This is a raw, explosive outpouring of love and thanks after being delivered from mortal danger.
It's the ultimate proof that real faith is forged under maximum pressure. So our mission today, really drawing from the source material, is to go through this magnificent song verse by verse.
We really want to analyze the incredible metaphors David uses for God, and, maybe most spectacularly, the almost unbelievable description of God's personal, cosmic intervention.
So let's get right into it. Section 1, the foundation of love and multifaceted protection. This covers the first 3 verses.
It's interesting, David doesn't begin with a list of his troubles or a request. He starts with this core emotional statement in verse 1.
"I will love thee, O Lord, my strength."
Just simple, powerful.
And notice the tense. It's a choice. I will love thee. It's a deliberate, active decision he's making after the storm has passed. It's a foundational commitment to the source of his very survival. It's all about love, not duty.
That really sets the standard, doesn't it? When we approach God, our first thought shouldn't be about obligation, but about a real relationship rooted in love. But then he immediately calls God his strength. I mean, David was a warrior, a brilliant strategist. He could have boasted a little.
You'd think so, right? But David learned a very hard lesson out there in the wilderness. His own strength, the strength that killed Goliath, was completely useless against the sustained power of a king's entire army.
Right, and the psychological toll of just constantly being on the run.
Exactly. So by calling God his singular strength, he's basically saying, I recognize that every victory, every escape, every breath I took, it was all completely outside of my own ability.
And the material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team makes a brilliant point here. It notes that starting this way actually fulfills the very essence of the greatest commandment. It reminds us of Mark chapter 12, verse 30.
It does. Jesus confirms it right there. "And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all your mind and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment." David is modeling exactly how worship should begin.
So the practical application for you, the listener, is pretty clear. Before you bring your list of needs, first just articulate your love, your devotion.
Worship is about acknowledging God's worthiness first. And that worthiness just explodes in verse 2 with this incredible list of titles. It's like one name isn't enough to contain his gratitude.
It's a complete outpouring.
I
Let me
know.
read it. "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my strength in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation and my high tower."
7 distinct metaphors for God's protection and power. We should really break these down because they are so specific. He starts with images he would have known intimately from hiding in the Judean wilderness: the rock and the fortress.
In that kind of terrain, a rock isn't just a pebble. It's the mountain itself, the stronghold.
Precisely. The rock is the unshakable foundation in a dangerous, shifting world. Absolute stability. Then the fortress is the constructed defense, the impenetrable place. David was always hiding in strongholds, but he came to realize the physical walls only held because God was the true wall.
So those two cover his physical security. Then he moves to the more active roles, deliverer and strength.
Right. The deliverer is the one who steps in at the last possible second, who snatches you from a danger you can't escape on your own. And strength, that just reinforces verse 1. It's the power that sustains you.
Okay, now we get to these 3 really specific military images. First, the buckler, That's a very subtle word choice, isn't it?
It's completely intentional. A buckler wasn't the huge shield you'd use in a battle line. It was small, round, easy to move. It was the shield for close quarters, hand-to-hand combat.
So it symbolizes God's protection when the danger is right in your face.
Yes. When temptation or persecution or just confusion is breathing down your neck, God is that immediate, tailored defense for that very personal, urgent threat.
That's a totally different picture from just being safe behind fortress walls. This is God in the middle of the fight with you.
Absolutely. And then he says, the horn of my salvation. Now that's an aggressive image. The horn of an animal, like a bull, isn't a defensive tool. It's an offensive weapon.
So God isn't just blocking blows. He's actually securing the victory by charging forward.
Yes. It means God doesn't just keep you from losing. He guarantees you will win. He is the power that overcomes the enemy, which is exactly why David is writing this song in the first place. He won.
And then finally, the high tower. I immediately think of that verse in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe.
It's the same idea. A high tower gives you safety, of course, but it also gives you elevation, perspective. It lifts you above the chaos of the battle so you can see the enemy coming, see the bigger picture. It's security combined with spiritual clarity.
So when you, the listener, feel vulnerable, you can claim these titles. You can remind yourself that God covers every angle. Stability, defense, offense, intimate protection, and clear vision.
And that confidence, that comprehensive understanding of God's character leads directly into his action in verse 3.
I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies.
The source material calls this the formula of faith, and I think that's perfect. The decision to call is based entirely on the confidence that the one you're calling is worthy of praise.
It's not a desperate guess. It's a logical conclusion. Because God is my rock, my fortress, my horn. Therefore, he is worthy, and therefore when I call, I will be saved.
That worthiness guarantees the result. It's the same confidence we see reflected in the New Testament in Romans chapter 10, verse 13. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved.
It just shifts the burden of proof off of us and onto God's unchanging, proven character, a beautiful, solid foundation.
It is. But now David is about to plunge us into the dark reality that made this faith so necessary. And that brings us to section 2, crisis, despair, and the cry for divine attention, which is verses 4 through 6.
And the shift in tone here it's jarring. He goes from the heights of worship right into the depths of total despair. He's describing his near-death experiences in verses 4 and 5.
Listen to this. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me.
The imagery is just suffocating. He feels surrounded. The sorrows of death, that's a literal mortal danger he was in every single day. And the floods of ungodly men, that's Saul's army, this relentless, overwhelming force just trying to drown him.
But the truly devastating phrase is, the sorrows of hell compass me about. Now, we have to be careful here with the word hell. The Hebrew is Sheol.
Right. It doesn't mean the place of eternal torment that we might think of today.
Exactly. Sheol was the grave, the pit, the realm of the dead. It was the underworld in ancient thought. So David isn't just saying he was afraid of dying. He's saying he felt like the grave itself, the very territory of death, already had its grip on him.
He felt trapped, like death had already set its snares and cut off every possible escape route.
It was, from a human perspective, a completely hopeless situation. He felt like he'd been swallowed by darkness.
And that kind of raw, existential despair, it gives us permission to feel that way too. It validates our own moments of feeling utterly trapped and abandoned.
It absolutely does. The material we're working with draws a direct line to the prophet Jonah. Remember his cry from the belly of the great fish?
In Jonah chapter 2, verse 2, he says, "Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice." It's the same feeling. They felt like they were already dead and gone.
But they clung to that one tiny thread of hope. And for David, that desperation leads to the magnificent turning point in verse 6. He stops looking at the grave and starts looking toward heaven.
In my distress I call upon the Lord and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears.
The contrast there is just incredible. God is in his heavenly temple, this place of infinite majesty and cosmic power.
And yet David's raw, human cry travels all that way and reaches even into his ears.
That detail is so important. It suggests God isn't just passively aware. He leans in. He focuses. He listens intently to the sound of one person's distress. The majesty of God doesn't cancel out his personal attentiveness.
We often feel like our prayers are too small or too messy to get through all the noise of the universe. David shows us the exact opposite is true.
And that is the practical application that the You Need Faith in Jesus team really emphasizes. You have permission to bring your most desperate, raw, even angry feelings of being trapped to God. We're told in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16, to come boldly unto the throne of grace. David's cry is proof that that boldness works.
And the response to that cry, well, it's the biblical equivalent of an atomic bomb going off. It's maybe the greatest piece of poetry in all of Scripture. Which brings us to section 3. The cosmic rescue God bows the heavens, verses 7 through 15.
This whole section is what's called a theophany, an appearance of God. And the intensity is just off the charts, all to describe God's personal commitment to rescuing David.
So let's look at the immediate result of David's prayer. Verses 7 through 9. The entire physical world reacts to God's anger.
Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet.
That is just terrifying. He's saying earthquakes, tectonic shifts are a result of God's anger. Not anger at David, but anger at the injustice being done to David.
The poetry here is using what we call anthropomorphism, giving God human-like features, but on a cosmic scale. His righteous anger is like smoke from his nostrils, devouring fire from his mouth. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a picture of divine judgment being unleashed.
And that one line in verse 9, he bowed the heavens also and came down. The creator of the universe personally bends the fabric of reality to intervene for one man.
The scale is the whole point. The rescue of one person is important enough to trigger the same kind of power God used in massive, world-changing events. The source material makes a direct comparison to God's appearance at Mount Sinai.
Right, from Exodus chapter 19, verse 18.
Exactly, which says, "And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the whole mount quaked greatly."
So God is shaking the earth to save David, just like he shook Sinai to give the law to an entire nation. It tells you how much God values the suffering of one of his children.
He doesn't delegate, he comes down himself.
Okay, but I have to ask, why so violent? Why this terrifying cosmic display? Couldn't God have just, quietly dealt with Saul?
That's a crucial question. The scale of the response has to match the scale of the spiritual forces at play. This wasn't just a political squabble, it was rooted in spiritual rebellion. God's response is a declaration of absolute sovereignty over all creation. It's a lesson for David, and for us, that no power, physical or spiritual, can stand against God when he decides to act for his people.
It sets an absolute non-negotiable boundary.
Okay.
So moving on to verses 10 through 12, God uses the elements as his transport and his cover.
And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yeah, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. At the brightness that was up before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire.
The movement here is breathtaking. Riding a cherub, flying on the wings of the wind. It emphasizes God's speed, his command over everything.
And then you get this profound paradox. He uses darkness and thick clouds as his secret place, his pavilion. A pavilion is like a royal tent. We usually look for God in the light and clarity, but David says that when God is preparing his most dramatic moves, he often works from within the storm, within the chaos.
That's a real challenge to how we normally think about faith. It suggests that chaos isn't always God being absent. It might actually be his preparation zone.
Precisely. So for you, the listener, when you feel you're surrounded by dark waters and thick clouds, financial turmoil, emotional confusion, whatever it is, remember this. That mystery might be God's pavilion. He's cloaking his power so that when his brightness finally breaks through, the deliverance is undeniable.
And it breaks through with hailstones and coals of fire.
Which is just immense comfort. The moments of greatest confusion might actually be when we are closest to a divine breakthrough. And that breakthrough, that divine combat in verses 13 through 15 is just overwhelming.
The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils.
God's weapons aren't swords and spears. His voice is thunder. His arrows are lightning bolts, which he uses to scatter and confuse the enemy. The word is discomfited. It's psychological warfare waged by the Creator.
And that final image. The power of his rebuke, the blast of the breath of thy nostrils, is so immense it rips the oceans apart and exposes the very foundations of the planet.
It's the same power that parted the Red Sea, now being used for David. No enemy, human or demonic, can possibly stand against a God who uses cosmic forces as personal weapons for his children. It's awesome, terrifying, but ultimately an incredible affirmation of his commitment.
A statement of unstoppable power dedicated to a personal rescue. And that rescue is successful, which brings us to section 4, personal deliverance and divine delight, verses 16 through 19.
Right. After that cosmic light show, David brings it all back down to the personal. What did it feel like to be the one rescued? Look at verses 16 and 17.
He sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me.
The language is so intimate. He took me, he drew me out. This wasn't an accident. This was a dedicated, hands-on retrieval mission from the chaos, from the many waters.
And I love the honesty. He just admits it flat out. My enemies, they were too strong for me. He takes no credit. He acknowledges he was completely and totally outmatched.
That honesty is the bedrock of faith, isn't it? It wasn't a 50-50 fight where God just tipped the scales. This was a 0% chance of survival for David on his own. And that reality that God has to send from above to save us from forces too strong for me, that is the heart of the gospel.
Right. Our enemies of sin and death were way too strong for us until God sent Jesus.
Exactly. So the focus shifts from the how of the rescue, the cosmic fireworks, to the why. And the motivation is found in verses 18 and 19.
They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me because he delighted in me.
So the enemy attacked him at his weakest moment, his day of calamity. But the Lord was his stay, his support. And the result, God moved him from being trapped in caves to a large place, a place of freedom, security, opportunity.
And then comes the core reason for all of it. All that earth-shaping power was unleashed because he delighted in me.
It's a staggering thought. The rescue wasn't motivated by duty. It wasn't because David earned it. It was motivated by God's personal pleasure, his delight in his child.
God takes joy in rescuing his people. It's an act of divine pleasure, not reluctant obligation.
It's the ultimate answer to the lie that God is some kind of a reluctant savior. The material we're looking at points to Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17, which says, God will rejoice over thee with joy. He will joy over thee with singing.
So the takeaway for you, listening, is to rest in the truth that God delights in you as his child. His desire is to bring you into that large place of freedom, not because he has to, but because it brings him joy.
It's the verse to hold on to when you feel small or undeserving. The God of the cosmos loves you personally, and your rescue brings him delight.
And that confidence, that assurance, leads David into a reflection on the principles of how God deals with us, which is a really interesting pivot into section 5, God's principles of dealing and vindication, verses 20 through 28.
Yeah, and this section starts with a passage that, if you're not careful, can sound incredibly self-righteous. David seems to claim God rewarded him based on his own merit.
Let's read it, verses 20 through 24. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and I kept myself from mine iniquity.
See, on the surface, it's a bit of a theological problem. We know David was a deeply flawed man. Adultery, murder. He's not perfect. So how can he say this?
He sounds like he's claiming to be sinless, which we know only Christ was. So that can't be right.
It can't. The key is understanding this in its very specific historical context. He's claiming relative innocence in the conflict with Saul. He's not saying, I am perfect before God. He's saying, in this particular fight, I was in the right.
And the sources back this up, right? They point out that even Saul himself admitted David was more righteous than he was.
Yeah.
That's in 1 Samuel chapter 24, verse 17.
Exactly. David had a clear shot to kill Saul and end his suffering, but he refused to lift his hand against the Lord's anointed. That act showed a cleanness of hands compared to Saul's murderous obsession. He's appealing to the fact that he was unjustly hunted and he didn't take vengeance himself.
And he says he kept himself from mine iniquity, his own specific besetting sin.
Right. Which in that moment might have been taking matters into his own hands. The challenge for us is to live with that same integrity in our own conflicts and to consciously fight against our own particular weaknesses.
And this leads to a universal principle of how God responds to us in verses 25 through 27.
With the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful. With an upright man thou wilt show thyself upright. With the pure thou wilt show thyself pure, and with the froward thou wilt show thyself froward.
Okay, so God basically mirrors the attitude we bring to him. If you're merciful, you experience his mercy. But what does froward mean? That's not a word we use every day.
The Hebrew word means twisted or crooked or perverse. So if someone comes to God with a crooked heart, trying to manipulate or hide things, God shows himself froward in the sense that he is shrewd. He can untangle their crooked paths. He can't be tricked.
So if you try to be complicated with God, he'll respond in a way that confounds your complications.
Exactly. It's what Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Your heart posture determines your experience of God. If he seems distant, maybe look inward first.
David then closes this section with a simple, beautiful promise in verse 28.
For thou wilt light my candle. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness.
I love that image. The candle is hope, life, joy. When it goes out, that's despair. And David is certain God is the one who actively relights that candle. He brings clarity into the darkness of grief or confusion.
It's a promise of God's active intervention against our internal despair. And of course, the ultimate fulfillment of that is Jesus, who said in John chapter 8, verse 12, I am the light of the world.
So when you're in a season of darkness, this verse is a powerful, simple prayer. Trust God to light your candle and bring clarity.
It gives you the spiritual energy to keep going, which is exactly what David talks about next. The supernatural empowerment God gives for the fight. This is section 6, supernatural empowerment and trust, verses 29 through 42.
And he starts with these impossible feats he accomplished, giving all the credit to God in verse 29.
For by thee I have run through a troop, and by my God have I leaped over a wall.
Running through an enemy troop, leaping over a fortified wall. These are superhero-level acts. These are explicitly supernatural.
David is making it clear, this isn't about him being a great athlete. God doesn't just help him, God is the ability itself. It's the Old Testament version of that famous New Testament verse, Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me.
So for us today, the application is clear. We all face walls, a huge project at work, a stubborn sin, a daunting challenge. This verse tells us we can approach it with faith, knowing God enables the impossible.
But that power isn't just random. It's rooted in God's perfect, reliable character, which David affirms in verse 30.
As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in him.
Such a dense theological statement. Two key truths. First, God's way, his plan, his methods is perfect, flawless. Second, his word, his promises are tried. That means it's been tested in fire and proven to be pure and completely trustworthy.
And because his plan is perfect and his promises are proven, the result is that guaranteed protection, the buckler again, that close-up shield, for anyone who trusts him.
It's the ultimate confidence builder. When you start to doubt, you stand on the fact that God's integrity is absolute. It's confirmed in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 5. Every word of God is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him.
David then comes back to this idea of God preparing him for battle in verses 31 through 34.
For who is God save the Lord, or who is a rock save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength, and maketh my way perfect. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and setteth me upon my high places. He teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken by my arms.
He starts with that rhetorical question, who else is there? Only God. What does it mean that God girdeth me with strength?
To gird yourself in those days meant to tie up your long robe into your belt. It was the ancient way of saying, okay, time to get ready for action. It means God is preparing David, the soldier, for a hard fight.
Then there's that incredible image, he maketh my feet like hinds' feet.
A hind is a female deer, and they are famous for being incredibly agile and sure-footed on dangerous, rocky cliffs. That's exactly the terrain David was running through. So he's saying, I'm not stumbling and falling on the treacherous paths of life because God himself gives me the spiritual agility to navigate them safely.
It's not just strength for the fight, but agility for the journey.
Exactly, and it's a complete preparation. God also teaches his hands to war, giving him the supernatural strength to bend a bow of steel, an impossible feat. God provides both the skill and the power.
And now we get to one of the most surprising and counterintuitive insights in the whole psalm. It's in verses 35 and 36. This just flips our whole idea of success on its head.
Thou hast also given me the shield of thy salvation, and thy right hand hath holden me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great. Thou hast enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip.
Did you catch that? He says God's gentleness made him great. Not his power, not his might, his gentleness. Why?
It's a profound paradox. The Hebrew word there can also mean humility or condescension or consideration. David realizes he didn't become great by being aggressive and harsh. He became great because the all-powerful God of the universe condescended to deal with him patiently and sportively.
God didn't crush him for his mistakes. He handled him with care, which allowed him to grow.
Exactly. It was God's careful, patient support, his right hand holding David up, making his footing secure, that led to his stability and greatness. The takeaway is radical. Real spiritual growth comes not from our aggressive ambition, but from yielding to the powerful, supportive, and surprisingly gentle hand of God.
That is a truth to really sit with.
Mm.
And because of that gentle support, David achieves total victory, which he summarizes in verses 37 through 42.
I have pursued mine enemies and overtaken them. Thou hast subdued under me those that rose up against me. I did cast them out as the dirt in the streets.
It's just a description of absolute, total conquest. But only because, as he says, God girded me with strength.
This physical victory is a picture of the spiritual victory we're called to. The sources remind us that we're in a spiritual battle, as it says in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. We wrestle against spiritual darkness.
So we're supposed to pursue and overcome that spiritual opposition with the same thoroughness, resting completely in God's strength.
No half measures. Which brings us to the final glorious section of the psalm, where David's personal story expands to an eternal global scale. This is section 7, Exaltation and Eternal Covenant, verses 43 through 50.
David's problem started with one man, Saul. But God's deliverance went way beyond that, didn't it? As we see in verses 43 through 45.
Thou hast delivered me from the strivings of the people, and thou hast made me the head of the heathen. A people whom I have not known shall serve me.
So God saves him from civil war at home, the strivings of the people, and then makes him ruler over foreign nations, the heathen. That's a huge expansion of scope.
And it points directly to the future. David's temporary reign over other nations is a prophetic picture of the Messiah's ultimate global authority.
It's an echo of that promise in Psalm chapter 2, verse 8, where God says to his son, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance."
David's victory confirms God's plan was always global. And as believers today, we're part of that expanding kingdom, looking forward to the day that promise is fully realized.
And David just boils it all down to this triumphant shout in verse 46.
The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted.
This is such an active declaration. He's not an idea. He's not a dead idol. He liveth. Our God is alive.
And our foundation, our rock, is built on that living God, not on some philosophy or temporary political power. Our entire salvation rests on the fact that our Lord is alive and active.
And he reinforces again that vengeance and vindication belong to God alone. We see that in verses 47 to 48. It is God that avengeth me. Thou hast delivered me from the violent man.
Right. It goes back to his integrity. He didn't take revenge on Saul. He trusted God to be his vindicator, living out the principle we later see in Romans chapter 12, verse 19. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord.
And this incredible personal story of deliverance, it was never meant to be kept private. That's the point of verse 49.
Therefore will I give thanks unto thee, O Lord, among the heathen, and sing praises unto thy name.
The significance of that is huge. His personal testimony is meant for the whole world, for the Gentiles, the heathen.
It's so critical that the Apostle Paul quotes this exact verse in Romans chapter 15, verse 9, to prove that God's plan always included non-Jews. Paul uses David's personal song to validate the universal scope of the gospel.
So the mandate for you, the listener, is clear. Your personal story of God's deliverance is meant to be public. It's meant to glorify his name and show his power to people who don't know him yet.
And finally, David anchors this entire 50-verse masterpiece in God's eternal covenant love in the final verse, verse 50.
Great deliverance he giveth to his king, and sheweth mercy to his anointed, to David, and to his seed forevermore.
And that word mercy there is the powerful Hebrew word hesested. It means loyal love, covenant faithfulness.
Yeah.
God acts not on a whim, but based on his unbreakable contractual love for his anointed, his Messiah.
So he sets the bridge between the personal delight we saw earlier and the eternal promise we see here. It's God's steadfast commitment.
Precisely. And the promise isn't just for David, it's for his seed forevermore. That promise, first given back in 2 Samuel chapter 7, is fully and finally realized in King Jesus. Our security in Christ is eternal because it's anchored in that unshakable covenant love. That's the ultimate climax of Psalm 18.
What a journey. From the edge of the grave, through a cosmic storm of deliverance, to the certainty of an eternal covenant. I think the key lesson from Psalm 18 is that the same power that shakes the foundations of the world is personally dedicated to our rescue, and it's motivated by God's delight in us.
It is the ultimate confidence a believer can have.
Yeah.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to take away. If God's response to the cry of one man, David, involved bowing the heavens and shaking the earth, what does that tell you about the scale and power of the combined prayers of all his people, offered together through the ultimate anointed one, Jesus Christ? The power available to the church is truly beyond our comprehension.
We want to give a huge thank you to the You Need Faith in Jesus team for providing the incredible content that made this deep and comprehensive teaching discussion of Psalm 18 possible. Their material gave us such a rich perspective.
And to solidify your understanding of this lesson, be sure to use the flashcards to review key terms and then take the quiz. Passing the quiz will mark this lesson as complete.
And that wraps up this deep dive. We look forward to exploring more vital knowledge with you next time.